let me paint you a picture of absolute disrespect. It's June of 2017. The Nürburgring, 13 miles of German engineering ego, 73 corners of pure automotive judgment. Porsche owns this place. Ferrari pays rent here. Lamborghini shows up on weekends hoping for a miracle. And then, a Chevrolet Camaro pulls up. Not a Corvette, a Camaro, with a 6-speed manual, a supercharged V8, and a price tag of $70,000. What happened next made Stuttgart choke on its schnitzel. Here's the thing about the Nürburgring. It's not just a racetrack. It's a reputation machine. Every supercar manufacturer on the planet sends their fastest, most expensive creations to this 13-mile stretch of German asphalt to prove they belong at the top of the automotive food chain. And for decades, the hierarchy was clear. German precision on top, Italian passion in the middle, and American muscle somewhere in the parking lot, doing burnouts and scaring pedestrians. The Porsche 911 GT3 RS, specifically the 991.1 generation, was the benchmark in 2016. An all-aluminum 4-liter naturally aspirated flat, 6 screaming at 8,800 RPM. 493 horsepower, not from a turbo, not from a supercharger, but from pure atmospheric fury and German stubbornness. It weighed 3,296 pounds. It cost $175,900, and it lapped the Nürburgring in 7 minutes and 20 seconds flat. That was the standard. That was the wall. And then Chevrolet, yes, the company that also makes the Spark and the Equinox, decided to send a muscle car to fight it. Not just any muscle car. The Camaro ZL1 1LE, a car with an RPO code of A1Z, which sounds less like a performance package and more like a robot serial number. But what this robot could do would rewrite the rules. The ZL1 1LE started life as a regular ZL1 Camaro, which is already absurd. 6.2 liters of supercharged V8 madness, the LT4 engine. 650 horsepower, 650 pound-feet of torque. Yes, you heard that right. The horsepower and torque numbers are identical. It's like Chevrolet's engineers looked at balance and said, nah, let's just max everything out and see what happens. And here's where the story gets beautiful. That LT4? It's not some specially developed racing engine with hand-polished unicorn tears in the combustion chambers. It's the exact same motor from the Corvette Z06, an all-aluminum block and heads, because you can't hunt Porsches with a heavy iron anchor in the nose. The same one. Chevrolet literally reached into the Corvette parts bin, grabbed a 650 horsepower supercharged V8 and dropped it into a car that weighs 3,820 pounds and has the rear visibility of a submarine with tinted windows. But the 1LE package, that's where Chevrolet stopped being funny and started being terrifying. Because the 1LE wasn't about adding horsepower. It was about removing excuses. The first thing they did, ripped out the magnetic ride control suspension, the fancy electronically adjustable system that made the ZL1 livable on the street, and replaced it with something that had absolutely no interest in your comfort. Enter DSSV dynamic suspension spool valve, built by a Canadian company called Multimatic. Now, here's the part that makes engineers go quiet in a room. This DSSV technology, Red Bull Racing used it to win 4 consecutive Formula One World Championships from 2010 through 2013. Multiple championship-winning F1 teams have relied on Multimatic's spool valve dampers. Ford used it on the GT that won Le Mans in 2016. This isn't some garage experiment. It's the same fundamental technology that dominates the highest levels of motorsport on the planet. And Chevrolet put this technology in a Camaro. A $70,000 Camaro with the same fundamental damper concept that helped Sebastian Vettel win 4 world titles. The automotive equivalent of strapping a jet engine to a pickup truck, except this actually worked. Let that marinate. But the DSSV wasn't the only trick. The 1LE package was an engineering exorcism. They bolted those Multimatic dampers into a MacPherson strut front and an independent 5-link rear geometry. 5 individual arms per side, keeping 650 horsepower connected to the asphalt. They installed adjustable camber plates for corner-specific tuning, springs reportedly up to 3 times stiffer than the standard ZL1, forged aluminum wheels, 19 inches by 11 in the front, 19 by 12 in the rear, actually an inch smaller in diameter than the base ZL1, but an inch wider. Why? Because Grip doesn't care about your Instagram photos. Grip cares about contact patch. The tires, Goodyear Eagle F1 Supercar 3R, built exclusively for this car. 305 section width in the front, 325 in the rear. These tires were so track-focused that Chevrolet essentially admitted they were garbage in the rain. But on dry tarmac, over 1.10 lateral G. That's more cornering force than most supercars that cost 3 times as much generate. Then there's the aerodynamics, and this is where the story turns into comedy. The ZL1 1LE got a carbon fiber rear wing, a larger front splitter, and front dive planes where the daytime running lights used to be. 300 pounds of downforce at 150 miles per hour, pulling over 100 cubic feet more air per minute than the standard ZL1. This thing didn't just cut through the air, it bullied it into submission. And those dive planes? They're the reason this car could not be sold in Europe. The front aero elements didn't meet European Union pedestrian safety regulations. According to Al Oppenheiser, the Camaro's chief engineer, the dive planes essentially failed the pedestrian impact tests. So Chevrolet had a choice: redesign the front end to make it Europe-friendly, or keep the dive planes and tell an entire continent to deal with it. They chose violence. Now, a quick clarification for the pedants in the comments. The ZL1 1LE wasn't technically banned by some dramatic European decree. It simply didn't pass the pedestrian safety standards, and Chevrolet decided not to redesign it. The standard ZL1, without the 1LE package, was actually sold in Europe until 2019, when emissions regulations ended Camaro sales there entirely. So it's more accurate to say the car was too aggressive for European homologation, which honestly sounds even better than banned. The weight savings were everywhere. A thinner rear window. Yes, they literally shaved the glass. Fixed rear seats instead of folding ones. Those smaller diameter forged wheels. The DSSV dampers were lighter than the magnetic ride units. All told, about 60 pounds less than the standard ZL1 coupe. Doesn't sound like much until you remember that every pound matters when you're asking a 3,820-pound muscle car to dance with Porsches. And here's the critical detail. The 2018 ZL1 1LE was manual only. 6-speed Tremec with active rev match. No automatic option existed for the first model year. If you wanted the ultimate track Camaro in 2018, you had to row your own gears. Chevrolet looked at the rest of the industry rushing toward paddle shifters and dual clutch transmissions and said, "Nah, figure it out yourself. 3 pedals or go home." So in June of 2017, before the car was even officially on sale, Chevrolet shipped a ZL1 1LE to Germany. Not for a photo shoot, not for a press event, for war. They put Bill Wise, their own ride and handling engineer, not a professional racing driver, not a hired gun from some racing series, behind the wheel. Stock car, production Goodyear tires, 6-speed manual, and they set him loose on the most punishing 13 miles of pavement ever poured. 7 minutes, 16 seconds, .04. That was the number that appeared on the timing screens. 7:16:04 around the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Bill Wise, a Chevrolet engineer with a 6-speed manual, had just lapped the Nürburgring 4 seconds faster than the Porsche 911 GT3 RS that cost $176,000. 4 seconds. At the Nürburgring, 4 seconds is a lifetime. 4 seconds is the difference between arriving at a corner with confidence and arriving at a corner in an ambulance. The 716 was also faster than the Ferrari 488 GTB, which cost roughly $260,000. Faster than the Nissan GT-R. Faster than the Mercedes SLS AMG. And here's the one that hurts. Faster than General Motors' own Corvette Z06 ZR1, which had done a 719. The Camaro beat the Corvette. At $70,000 versus, well, the ZR1 wasn't cheap either. I'll wait while Porsche fans process that. Let's do the math on this humiliation. The GT3 RS cost $175,900. The ZL1 1LE cost $69,995. That's a difference of about $106,000. For that $106,000, Porsche gave you a slower lap time. You could buy the Camaro, spend 50 grand on track days, blow up the engine, buy another engine, and still have money left over compared to the Porsche. Now, in the interest of being technically honest, and because we respect our audience more than clickbait factories, there are some asterisks here. The Porsche 720 was recorded on a 20.6-kilometer layout. Chevrolet ran the 20.8-kilometer layout, which is slightly longer. This means the Camaro actually covered more ground in less time, making the gap potentially even larger. Also, the Porsche time was a manufacturer claim, and so was Chevrolet's. Neither used notarized independent verification. But before you put the Camaro on a pedestal, and I know some of you are already getting the tattoo, context matters. The 991.1 GT3 RS that the Camaro BEAT was the 2016 model. The next generation, the 991.2 GT3 RS, arrived in 2018 with 520 horsepower and obliterated the Nürburgring in 6 minutes 56.4 seconds. That's roughly 20 seconds faster than the Camaro. And the 992 GT3 RS from 2022, 649.328, 27 seconds faster. So the ZL1 1LE beat the king, but the king's successors came back with a vengeance. That doesn't diminish what the Camaro did. It just proves that the Nürburgring is an arms race, and Porsche doesn't lose twice. But what about driving this thing on actual roads? You know, where normal humans exist. Well, let me put it this way. The DSSV suspension is passive. There's no comfort mode. There's no button that says, "Please be gentle with my spine." Those springs are 3 times stiffer than the regular ZL1. The tires howl on the highway like a choir of angry demons. And the Camaro's legendary visibility issues? Still here. The greenhouse is so small that changing lanes requires a combination of side mirrors, prayer, and a general acceptance of your own mortality. Every automotive journalist who reviewed the ZL1 1LE said basically the same thing. This is one of the greatest track cars ever built that you absolutely do not want to commute in. It's the automotive equivalent of dating someone who's incredible in one very specific situation and completely unbearable the rest of the time. This car deserves to be on someone's wall, not just in a museum. But here's what made the 1LE truly significant. The Camaro had always been America's muscle car. The straight-line hero, the drag strip king, the car that could do burnouts until the tires caught fire and the neighbors called the authorities. Nobody took it seriously as a road course weapon. The Z28 with its DSSV suspension started changing that perception back in 2014. But the ZL1 1LE, this was the moment the Camaro walked into Stuttgart's living room, sat in Porsche's favorite chair, and beat its Nürburgring time with a manual transmission. And Chevrolet knew exactly what they had. The 10-speed automatic became available in the 1LE starting in 2019, but by then the legend was written in 6 gears, not 10. Let's look at the math. The standard ZL1, without the track arrow and suspension, ran a 729.60. The 1LE package slashed almost 14 seconds off that time, nearly 14 seconds purely from Multimatic dampers, aerodynamic violence, and those sticky Goodyear 3R tires. And the best part? That blistering 7:16 time was set entirely by a human being rowing his own gears. The manual didn't just survive the ultimate track test, it wore the crown. The ZL1 1LE had a limited but meaningful production run from 2018 through 2024, the final model year of the 6th generation Camaro. And for that last year, Chevrolet released a collector's edition, limited to 350 units. The Camaro's last hurrah, wearing its track weapon crown as the curtain fell. Because yes, the Camaro is dead. Production ended in December of 2023. General Motors released a statement saying, and I am paraphrasing, "This is not the end of Camaro's story," which in corporate speak means, we have absolutely no idea what we're doing next, but please don't be mad. No successor has been announced. The car that embarrassed Porsche at the Nürburgring was discontinued, because apparently humiliating German engineering doesn't pay the bills. So what is the ZL1's legacy? It's the car that proved American muscle could do more than go fast in a straight line. It's the car that took Formula One damper technology and put it on a $69,995 vehicle. It's the car that beat the Porsche GT3 RS, the Ferrari 488, and its own corporate sibling, the Corvette, all on the most demanding track in the world. With a manual transmission, driven by an engineer, not a racing driver. Plot twist: they killed it anyway. The Camaro ZL1 was Detroit's way of telling Europe, we're not just here for the quarter mile anymore. We brought Formula One suspension technology, Corvette power, enough downforce to keep your bratwurst on the table, and a 6-speed manual because we still believe in doing things the hard way. It cost less than half of what Stuttgart charged for its best, and it was faster. If that doesn't make you proud of what American engineering can do when it actually tries, nothing will. And the best part? The very same dive planes that made it illegal to sell in Europe are the ones that helped it beat Europe's best. Poetic justice doesn't get better than that. If this insanity wasn't enough, we've got entire playlists of automotive violence waiting for you. Check out Street Legal Insanity for more cars that probably shouldn't exist on public roads. Drop a comment and tell me, would you daily drive a ZL1 knowing your chiropractor would become your best friend? And if you haven't already, subscribe, because the stories only get crazier from here. This is Car Chronicles, where $70,000 beats $176,000, and a manual transmission beats everything.